Chapter 27, Chapter 25, The Tower Beneath the Sea. Chapter 25, The Tower Beneath the Sea. South of the Sea of Trees, Ryu said flatly as the group sat around the table. He had called another meeting the morning after their return, and nobody seemed particularly thrilled about it, a sentiment he echoed. After everything they had gone through to run ARandomAudiobookAppeared down, the few scraps of information Gandaroof had been able to remember were a scant reward. There was the Wise Tree's bank account, of course, but monetary recompense would barely have been acceptable for Tunlin alone, and was completely out of the question for what Sten had gone through in Highland.
All right, he continued. Somebody who knows geography, narrow it down for those of us who don't. What's south of there? Directly south?
Nero asked.
Or everything south o' the line o' latitude?
Ryu gave him a look, as did Bao, Cat, Rand, and Sten.
I was just askin',
the old man protested.
Don't,
Ryu told him with deliberate calm.
Please. Well, you head straight south, you go into Carmen,
Nero explained.
Natural homo, both the farm clan and the ogre clan, not to mention the name Indian faith. A lot easier to get yourself into hot water down there than you would figure, especially with what's on the other side o' their southern border. Skenda, at least what's left of it. Ain't too many folks livin' there, since it's still a polluted shithole, even now. Only ones who bother for the most part are the Church o' St. Eva. They got a strong presence there for some reason. It's down to those two, then?
Bao asked.
That it? If you're going straight, yeah.
Nero shrugged.
But if you head east o' Carmen, you'll run into the Isle o' Guns pretty soon. Do the same when you reach Skenda, and you'll find Evray, not that you'll have much luck getting on there. All that's east o', those are a couple o' uninhabited islets until you get to Highland, and you've all already been through your paces there. Excuse me,
Spar said politely.
These other places are familiar to me, at least in name, but what is Evray? The holy city of the Church of St. Eva,
Nina told it.
The capital of the faith, and the second largest city in the world, second only to the undersea city-state of Prima. It's located on an island in the central south, roughly equidistant between Skenda and Highland. Supposedly, it's a sheer cliff all around, at least a mile high, which helps them discourage visitors. Nobody sets foot on there without the church's permission. Which, on the whole, might be just a little difficult for this particular group to manage,
Sten drawled.
A name Indian, an atheist, a grass man, and me,
Dees agreed.
Yeah, that could be kind of tricky. If it comes down to that, Ray could probably get us in.
Ryu shrugged.
It'd be difficult, though, and I don't really like the thought of asking that of him, so let's leave Evray for last. We should probably hit Skenda after trying Carmen, doesn't really make much sense to go around that way. So it's either Carmen or Guns first. I say we hit Guns,
Cat suggested quickly.
No sense in going to Carmen unless we have to.
Her eyes flickered over to Rand, and Ryu remembered the farm they had seen inside Gondarif's mind, and the big man's reluctance to talk about what it had meant.
Seconded,
Sten agreed.
Now, hold on.
Rand crossed his arms, frowning.
I appreciate the thought, guys, but let's be realistic here. We should choose wherever it's more likely, not where we want to go. If that means I gotta face up to my past, I can deal. Won't be my idea of a good time, but I'll be able to manage it. Sten did, and he had a hell of a lot more to go back to than I do. So, where's it more likely? Guns, or Carmen? Carmen,
Ryu said after a moment.
Not just because it's due south. Ray's already been to the Isle of Guns, and he didn't find any traces of demonic presence there. It's possible he might have missed something, but not likely. Looks like we're heading to Carmen, then.
Bao nodded.
Should we take Grandpa? I wouldn't suggest it,
Rand advised them.
The coastline's pretty treacherous, on account of how close it is to Skenda. There are only a few places where it's even close to safe to land, and they're all commercial docks by now. Pulling a whale up to one of those might not look good. So we head south from the Sea of Trees overland.
Dees nodded.
There shouldn't be much in our way, as I recall. Although my knowledge of geography around there's kind of out of date, to say the least. No, the only thing is...
Nina started to say, then trailed off, eyes widening.
Fog Valley,
Sten finished for her.
Don't worry, it'll be fine. I already went back there once, just to see if I could take it. I could. Won't be fun, but...
He shrugged.
Thanks, guys,
Ryu said, looking back and forth between him and Rand.
I appreciate this. Just take us on a vacation to Prima after we finally finish up,
the Highlander suggested with a grin.
At this rate, it'll be the only part of the world we haven't all seen by the time we're done. Har har.
Ryu rolled his eyes.
Alright, tomorrow we'll.
He trailed off as somebody knocked on the door leading out into the lobby. After a moment, Nero stood up and walked over to open it.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Sylvia said, taking in the meeting room at a glance.
I came down to visit Bao, but nobody was at the...
She froze, eyes widening, as she saw Dees, taking in her old friend's new appearance.
Hi, Sylvia,
Dees told her quietly after a long moment.
I hired on.
A long moment passed, as the two women stared at each other. Finally, face pale and eyes narrowed, Sylvia strode around the table towards Dees and delivered a slap that knocked her chin towards the ceiling. Without another word, she turned right around and stomped back through the door, and out of the room.
Ah, geez.
Bao scratched his head, but despite his voice, he didn't look particularly troubled.
Sorry, Dees. I'll try and talk some sense into her. It's all right,
Dees replied, voice strangely quiet as she readjusted her head.
I deserved that, really. I can't blame her. Well,
Ryu said after a long, awkward moment.
I guess we're done here. Like I was saying, we'll head out for Fog Valley tomorrow, unless something comes up. Excuse me.
Another voice carried through the open door, this one an unfamiliar male's. Turning around again, Ryu saw a middle-aged Menero standing near it, peering through as if not wanting to cause a disturbance. His scales were a deep green, and his features average, fins twitching slightly as he watched them. Judging by his expensive-looking robes and the amount of jewelry he wore, he was one of the more successful members of the mercantile clan.
Are you the Dragon Kin? I was told this was where I could find your agent. That'd be me, fella,
Nero said, dropping his usual easy tones and assuming a much more precise, practical voice despite his strange accent.
Nero Money, nice to meet ya. Come on, let's step out here into the lobby. What can I do for you? Should we?
Bao left it hanging, glancing at Ryu.
Sounds like Nero's got this one, but I'll stick around in case he needs me.
Ryu shrugged.
Meeting's over anyways.
Taking the hint, the others got up, most of them headed upstairs, but Bao took off after Sylvia like he had said he would.
I'll cut right to the chase, Mr. Money,
the Menero said as Ryu casually followed him and Nero into the lobby, leaning against a wall.
My name's Nunzio Clemenza, and I represent the First Bank of Prima. We'd like to contract your group's services immediately.
Oh. Nero glanced over his shoulder at Ryu, who shrugged noncommittally.
Could be tricky, considering we're kinda already on a contract. Still, no harm in hearing you out. What's the job? It's a rather simple, short-term one,
Nunzio explained.
It would need to be completed immediately, but if what your group's anywhere close to as capable as I've heard, they should be able to do so within a day or two.
He glanced at Ryu as well for a moment, eyes keen, then turned back to Nero.
Do you know what Sky Tower is? 2,000-year-old artifact of the First Dragon War,
Nero rattled off.
Lost technology, using one of the goddess keys, able to alter weather patterns all over the world. Used to be called Spire. Got washed out to sea in a geological disturbance a few centuries back, but somehow, the damn thing stayed upright. Can't use the weather control system no more, not without the Sky Key, so the Menero clan's gone and started using it as an easy way to bring folks from other clans down to the ocean floor so's they can get to Prima. Ah. Correct,
Nunzio said after a moment.
Of course, that last part is only on rare occasions, as it requires the use of a set of our artificial gills, which are difficult to reproduce. At any rate, the problem is simple. 1 week ago, we lost all communications with Sky Tower. At the same time, heavy fog banks have appeared around the world, including over the tower itself. That, combined with volatile sea currents that have spawned around it, have prevented anybody from outside being able to access the tower. Presumably, none of the men within it at the time can leave, for the same reasons. These fog banks,
Ryu chimed in with a sinking feeling.
I don't suppose one of them is located in Fog Valley, down in Carmen. Why, yes,
Nunzio admitted, sounding surprised.
I'm told that, combined with its natural state, the entire area is completely impassable at the moment. Why? Oh, nothing.
Ryu slapped his face.
Don't mind me. These currents you're talking about.
Nero scratched his chin.
Reckon a big enough critter could get through 'em? Say, a whale. A whale.
Nunzio blinked.
Well, yes, I suppose so. What, are you going to tell me you have one on your payroll?
He chuckled.
More like we did a job for one a while back, and the old fella owes us a couple favors,
Nero explained.
Like, say, hitching a ride out there. I see,
Nunzio murmured, looking skeptical.
Well, I suppose it doesn't matter how exactly you get there, so long as you can. To put it simply, we'd like you to discover what the problem is and rectify it. Presumably, somebody has managed to activate the weather control system somehow and keep the staff from taking the tower back. Figure it out, fix the problem, and the First Bank of Prima will pay you handsomely. Why don't we talk about exactly how handsome we're talking here?
Nero rubbed his hands together.
I'm heading upstairs, Nero,
Ryu told him. His part in the discussion was done, and there was no way sticking around for the financial portion of the negotiations could help.
Come on up and let me know the details when you're done.
He started to walk away, then paused, remembering something.
While I've got your ear, Mr. Clemenza, I'd appreciate it if you could look into something for us while we're working. There's a very old account with the First Bank of Prima that we've been given access to, you see, so bringing it to an ordinary clerk would probably just cause headaches for all involved. Our clerks are very efficient, young man,
Nunzio harumphed, looking slightly offended, although he did accept a copy of Gondaref's account information once Ryu had finished scribbling it all down on a piece of paper from Nero's desk.
Exactly how old an account are we talking here, anyways? Ryu.
Spar called from the stairs as it descended.
Dees has gone into her room and locked the door. She's refusing to talk to anybody.
It paused, taking in the way they were all looking at it.
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt something? Nah, it's cool.
Ryu thumbed at it.
That old, Mr. Clemenza. I see,
Nunzio muttered, staring at the piece of paper.
You do realize that our accumulated interest rates do cut off after a century of inactivity, yes? Why don't you and me talk about that, too?
Nero put a friendly hand on the now shaken Manairo's shoulder and winked at Ryu, who nodded slightly.
Come on, Spar,
he said.
Let's go on up and tell the others the news.
Doing so, they found that most of the team were waiting in the hallway of the second story, leaning against various walls. Only Bao and Dees were absent. Ryu started to say something, then paused, before glancing at Spar.
How long were they up here? They were all present when I descended from the fourth floor after attempting to rouse Dees,
Spar explained.
Snitch,
Cat muttered.
I don't believe this,
Ryu said with mock exasperation, fighting to conceal a smile.
Were you all up here listening on the conversation like a bunch of eavesdropping school children? Of course not,
Nina replied primly.
We were simply waiting for you to be finished, so we could be informed of whether the plan was changed or not. I'll bet.
He shook his head.
Yeah, change of plans. Fog Valley's inaccessible, on account of some yahoo screwing around with the weather control system in Sky Tower. We'll be making a quick detour there to fix the problem first. And we'll get paid for it, too, right?
Sten smirked.
Why wouldn't we?
Ryu shrugged.
Anyways, we'll still be heading off in the morning. I'm going to go talk to Dees.
Continuing up the stairs to the fourth floor, he walked down to the end of the hall. All three of the women's rooms were on the same floor, apparently, saving that one for last had been the right call. Pounding on the door, he called through it.
Hey, Dees. Open up, hey.
When no response came, he pounded again.
Come on, Dees. It's me. If we can talk about my freaking love life, we can talk about this, hey.
Dees yelled something anatomically improbable.
Your call, Dees,
Ryu said casually, stepping back and starting to draw his sword.
We can afford getting the door replaced by now. You might not want to do that,
Dees shouted back, a smug undercurrent entering her voice.
Considering your love life and all. What's that supposed to mean?
Ryu asked, pausing with his hand on the hilt.
I'm naked in here.
Ryu paused. He blinked.
This isn't over,
he yelled as he turned away, and was grateful when she didn't respond. Running down the list of the other team members and taking them off of it one by one, he walked down the stairs again, only to find the rest of them in the third floor hallway, waiting for him. After a moment, he narrowed his eyes.
Alright, the first time was funny, but this little gag had better not get off its feet and start running. You had the right idea, boss,
Sten told him, voice radiating innocence.
Poor girl's going through a rough moment. Wouldn't be the act of a friend to No,
Ryu cut him off, then started looking around the room. For a moment, he considered asking Kat or Nina, but the glare in the former's eyes and the blush on the latter's cheeks quickly changed his mind about that.
Alright, Spar. Sorry to put this on you, but somebody needs to talk to her about this, and it looks like you're the only option available. Go up there, and do whatever it takes to get her to let you in so you can try and help her with this. I am not exactly skilled in the field of emotional disturbance,
Spar said, sounding dubious.
I am uncertain that I would improve the situation. As one who is an expert in such matters, Mon Ami, believe me when I say that well-meaning company will always help in such a crisis,
Jean assured it.
Yeah, something like that,
Ryu muttered, fighting a sudden surge of doubt.
You'll do fine, Spar. The rest of you, clear out. I don't care if you're still holding a grudge about Dee's or not. I'll admit, I'm still not happy about it either, but she's on the team, and we're not gonna start making exceptions on how we behave towards each other.
Without bothering to look, he walked past them down to the second floor and went into his own room, where he spent the next several hours sitting on his bed, staring up at the ceiling. Eventually, shortly before dinner time, he walked back out and headed upstairs to see how Spar was doing. The grass man was nowhere to be seen, but the door of Dee's room was slightly ajar now, and he could hear them talking from inside it. Walking over quietly, he leaned against the wall, just out of view of the door. It wasn't really eavesdropping, he told himself with a flash of guilt, he was simply waiting for the right moment to join the conversation now that Dee's had presumably put her blouse back on.
Should have seen it coming, really,
she was saying.
Honestly, I'm pretty lucky most of them are taking it as well as they are, especially Ryu and Nina. Can't really blame Bao and Kat if they're not so quick to let it slide. I really wouldn't know,
Spar murmured.
As I told Ryu once, this is the first time I've ever had friends, and I'm still unsure about my own ability to reciprocate that. Until now, the only other sentient being I had any real emotional attachment to was Gendaroof. You're lucky,
Dees told it quietly.
Or maybe just smart. Or both. When you've got a lifespan like ours. Making friends isn't all it's cracked up to be. If it's not impolite.
Spar hesitated a moment before continuing.
How long do you suppose you'll be with us? Assuming, of course, that we don't fail horribly and end up brutally slaughtered by demons. Honestly.
Dees sighed.
Not much more than a year, at most. Once the light dragon of the day actually starts off on his adventure, it's always over in about a year, give or take a few months. Maybe it'll go to a year and a half, but I doubt it. No, my money says by the time summer rolls around again, we'll have wrapped this up one way or another. I see,
Spar said calmly.
And once we do, you'll return to your eternal slumber. Wouldn't call it eternal, but yeah,
she admitted.
I woke up early this time as it is. Been about 10 years out in the world, waiting for you guys to find me. I haven't had that much time awake since. Well, since a long time. Before both Dragon Wars. You're unused to it,
Spar guessed.
It's altering the situation. Yeah.
She sighed.
I've been friends with Ryu and Bao for years now. Only met Kat a few months back, but she makes friends fast, and she doesn't really appreciate this sort of thing. And Nina. Hell, I've known Nina for nearly a decade. Do you have any idea how much fun it is to intentionally change your body into a prepubescent one? It's not. At all. I imagine not,
Spar said, slightly awkwardly.
Regardless. You have friends now, even if some of them are grudging about it. Yup,
she agreed, though she didn't sound happy about it.
I do. Not that it matters, in the long run. It'll still end the same way for me. You have no choice in the matter?
Spar asked.
Could you not simply wait for a time, once this particular adventure is concluded? A few years, surely, would not be unacceptable. Especially in comparison to your time of service accrued. Sure it wouldn't,
Dee said flatly.
Sure I could. But if I start doing that, I'll be tempted to do more, and to do it more often. To stick around after the fact for every time, and every time it'd be longer. Hell, even if I did it once, I might not be able to get up the nerve to go back to sleep until...
She trailed off.
Until...
Spar prompted her eventually.
Until they died,
she murmured, so quietly that Ryu could barely hear her.
Until they got old and died, and you and me were the only ones left. That's what I can never face. What I always turn away from, when I go back to sleep. I know that when I wake back up, they'll all be gone, they'll have died while I was sleeping. But I won't have to watch it happen. I never have, not once, not somebody who's one of my. Who's on the team. It's the only thing I'll never be able to do. And believe me, there's been a lot I have been.
Ryu shivered at the flat, dead tone she had assumed near the end.
Did they grow old and die last time?
Spar asked gently, and a long silence followed before it spoke again.
I'm sorry. Perhaps I shouldn't have asked that. It's a fair question, she replied, now sounding forcibly calm. It's just. I can't deal with it. Not right now.
After a moment, she continued, sounding slightly more normal.
No. Not all of them. But some of them did. Ah,
Spar murmured.
I suppose that would make it worse. The juxtaposition of.
It trailed off.
I'll stop now. What about you?
She asked after another long moment.
What are you going to do, when you outlive them all? It will hurt,
Spar admitted clinically.
I'm sure of it by now. But even if the group splits up eventually, I will remain in contact with all of them, for the entirety of their lives. When they die, I will see to arrangements, if nobody else will. And should they have descendants, I will continue to do everything I can to watch over them, as long as I am able. That much is something only I can do, with my lifespan. You're a good guy, Spar,
Dees told it softly.
And I mean that as a non-gender specific pronoun. It's worth it, Dees,
the grass man replied, quiet but confident.
I'm already sure of that. Even though my clan may frown on emotional attachments, even though we will outlive them all, and you will outlive even I. It's worth it.
Quietly, Ryu slipped away, mentally berating himself for not doing so earlier. There was no place in that conversation for him, and there never had been. Walking back towards the stairs, he paused on them, hearing more voices from above. It sounded like Kat and Nina were on the roof. Leaning against a wall, he told himself that once more, he was just waiting to see if the conversation was one he could join or not. And for a moment, he almost believed himself.
Don't see how you can brush it off so easy, to be honest,
Kat was saying, sounding like she was trying to be angry and failing for once. More than anything, her voice was resigned, tired.
I mean, you've been rooming with her ever since you got to the magic school, right? And she was running a con on you the whole time. Doesn't that piss you off? It did, at first,
Nina admitted.
But then I started thinking about it, and I remembered that she had tried to keep her actual lies to a minimum. She never told me anything about her past, or her family, and she never explained why she didn't have a last name. About the only real thing she did lie about was that she was my age. Everything else she just avoided. I'm fairly certain she knew all along it would come to this eventually, and tried to make it as easy on us as she could.
Kat muttered.
I never thought of it that way. So you're saying you figure it wasn't her call? Everything I know about the Dragon War suggests that Dees is even more a slave to fate than everybody else involved. When one of these little incidents pops up,
Nina explained.
If we're all puppets, then she's simply one who can see the strings. That doesn't necessarily mean she can do anything about it. Yeah, okay,
Kat said reluctantly.
I guess that makes sense. Alright, I'll try and cut her a break. No promises, but I'll try. Thank you,
Nina replied. For once, she sounded more cheerful than the other girl.
Ryu had a point, after all. She's one of us, now.
After a moment's pause, she continued, sounding mischievous.
At least she's not in the running. We should be grateful for that much, The running.
Kat sounded confused for a moment, before the zenny dropped.
Oh. Yeah, that would be the last thing we'd need. Poor Ryu would probably go neurotic and run off to join a Namindian monastery or something. I'm not sure his reaction would be quite that drastic,
Nina murmured.
It's for the best, all the same. I dare say we'd both be in trouble, considering her features. Listen to you,
Kat said, semi-jokingly.
Like you don't have it where it counts. Compared to Dees.
Nina asked dryly.
You're still better off than I am up there,
the Warren girl pointed out.
And she doesn't even have legs, so you're ahead of both of us on that one. Kat,
Nina said gently, sounding slightly amused.
Most girls our age would literally kill to look like you. Yeah.
Kat sighed heavily.
But compared to you two, I dunno, sometimes I wonder if I'm ever going to be more. You know.
She trailed off, and Ryu had to resist the impulse to try and glance up the stairs to see the hand motions he guessed she was making.
"You're making too much out of this,"
Nina assured her.
"Besides, with how much you exercise, at least you don't have to worry about staying in shape when you get older. I don't know how you do that." "It's not like I really like it that much,"
Kat explained.
"I mean, I don't dislike it, but really, it's just because I've got so much energy, you know? Gotta burn it off somehow, or I feel like I'm going to explode." "That's probably because of how much you eat,"
Nina pointed out.
"Maybe if you worked on that a little." "Well, yeah, but..."
Kat hesitated for a moment before continuing, sounding awkward.
"I get weird when I'm hungry." "Weird?"
Nina asked.
"Yeah, you know,"
Kat said slowly.
"Weird."
"Oh," Nina murmured, suddenly sounding flustered, and Ryu knew without even looking that she'd be blushing.
"I see. Yes, best to avoid that." "Ha."
Kat chuckled once, sounding amused now.
"Does that kind of thing still embarrass you? No wonder you always go red when Siso looks at you funny." "Oh."
Nina seemed to grope for a word.
"Laden. She stopped doing that after I told her I wasn't interested, alright? Why does that keep happening to me?" "Like I know."
Kat asked teasingly.
"If it helps, you're definitely not my type." "Oh, thanks,"
Nina replied sarcastically.
"There's a load off of my mind." "No charge,"
Kat told her, still sounding amused.
"Pretty sure D's sticks to guys, too." "Probably. No, what I'm worried about is the rest of Siso's family. Sana got hot for Ryu. We should really talk to her about that one day, and Siso's all over Jean, right? So if we run into one of them who's got a thing for wind..." "I'm trying very hard not to think about that,"
Nina said firmly.
"Can we please talk about something else?" "We could go get dinner,"
Kat suggested.
"Once the sun's down, anyways."
Ryu took that as his cue. Turning, he continued down the stairs, still fighting the guilt he felt. It was an old habit of his, one that had come up as a natural result of having the dragon's tear combined with his childhood post-gate, and he had been trying to grow out of it ever since starting the group up, but every so often he relapsed. Returning to the second floor, he heard another conversation from below in the meeting room, and paused once more to listen and watch before descending further.
"Says she'll stay next door for the night,"
Bao was telling the other male members of the team. He, Sten, Jean, Rand and Nero were all sitting around the table, looking much more relaxed than they ever did when a meeting was happening.
"Apparently they've still got some spare rooms for when the rest of their family shows up." "I guess,"
Nero replied.
"Still, I ain't sure that's such a good idea. Siso's okay, but Gigli takes some getting used to, and Sana..."
He glanced at Sten.
"Is, shall we say, unique,"
the Highlander finished smoothly.
I know.
Bao shook his head, looking frustrated.
"But when I offered her my bed and said I'd just sleep in a chair or something, she told me she didn't want to spend the night in the same building as D's." "Ouch,"
Rand muttered.
"Yeah, no kidding."
Bao slumped in his chair.
"Even I thought that was a little harsh. I've never seen her this pissed off about anything." "Consider the situation, mon ami,"
Jean suggested.
"She has been friends with Mademoiselle D's for nearly as long as you, or so I have heard, yes? And yet, she neither knows nor understands the complexities of fate and destiny which made this course of action an unfortunate necessity. To her eyes, it is simply an inexplicable betrayal, and thus unforgivable. Perhaps in time she will grow to understand just how tied all of our hands increasingly seem to be, and how much dislike we ourselves have for that situation, including D's. But that will take time, as I said, and will certainly not happen tonight." "That actually makes a lot of sense,"
Sten said once the Creeper Prince had finished.
"Are you feeling all right, Jean?" "Q?"
Jean blinked.
"Everybody always says that whenever I give them advice. Is it truly such a strange occurrence?" "Let's hope you're right,"
Bao muttered, brushing past that.
"It's bad enough trying to figure out what to do about me and Sylvia. You know, long term. Without thinking about her and D's hating each other for the rest of our lives." "D's wouldn't do that,"
Rand told him firmly.
"I'll grant you that normally, she doesn't take any shit from anybody no matter how much she might deserve it, but this is different. Worst comes to worst, she'll just do her best to avoid Sylvia. Kind of hoping it doesn't come to that myself, though, for a lot of reasons. You seem to know her pretty well, considering you haven't known her for all that long,
Bao commented, glancing at the big man.
Then again, I guess that ain't too surprising, considering.
He left it hanging.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Rand held up his hands, flushing slightly.
We're talking about your issues with girls, not mine, pal. Man's got a point,
Nero agreed.
Sides, we can always come back to him once we're done talking about you. Crimine.
Bao slapped his face.
Alright, I'll come out and admit it. If she doesn't dump me, I'm probably going to end up popping the question to her in another year or so, after we've got all this destiny bullshit cleared up. Everybody who's surprised by this in the slightest, raise their hands,
Sten commented. Nobody did.
Yeah, laugh it up.
Bao shook his head.
Look, she's a good girl, okay? And she likes my sorry ass, too. Never really told Ryu this, not sure how he'd take it, but I always kind of wanted to start a family eventually. Don't know if I'll ever really settle down, seeing how this is about the only line of work I've ever been any good at, but some of the other folks around here are raising kids, so I figure hey, maybe we could too. It seems that you have put a great deal of thought into this,
Jean murmured, and the others nodded.
And yet, from your tone, you seem worried about something. What is the problem? Problem is, she'd have to move here,
Bao explained.
It's not about living space, I figure the guys could put together another house for us, even if they're all filled by then. What I'm worried about is how she'd take that thought. I mean, she'd have to leave the Rangers Guild. Hans is a contact, but he ain't running a full guild office. And then what would she do? She's not the kind of girl who would be happy just being a housewife or whatever. You mentioned kids,
Rand reminded him.
That'll take up plenty of her time, trust me. Plenty of yours, too. At least, you'll never have to worry about a babysitter around here. Until then, I can train her up as my replacement for after I'm gone,
Nero added. Seeing the looks on their faces, he snorted.
Now, don't nobody go tellin' me that ain't necessary. I'm comin' up on 80, kids. I ain't gonna be around forever. Best for all o' us if there's someone around who can take over after. Guess so,
Bao admitted.
Yeah, she'd be a natural at that. She usually works the desk at the guild, after all. Thanks, man. Just making sense, that's all,
Nero told him before turning to Rand with a grin.
Now then, about the other side o' the current problem. Damn it, Tal,
Rand muttered, putting a palm to his face.
Yeah, laugh it up. It's not really that big a deal. She's a flirt. We all know this. Of course she is, mon ami,
Jean agreed, smirking as well.
And yet, I notice that you seem to find yourself. How to put this? Targeted by her attentions more often than not. She just knows she'll get the best reaction out of me, is all,
Rand argued.
I'm not really used to girls acting like that towards me. Never really happened much before. I don't know, man,
Bao commented.
I've known her for a long time, and if it's still her, she goes for you more than I've ever seen her tease anybody. And believe me, I've seen her mess with a lot of guys. I think she might actually like you. Yeah, right.
Rand scoffed.
Tell me another one. Out of all the guys here, you think she's going for me? I don't think so. You sell yourself far too short, mon ami,
Jean told him.
My own dear sister referred to you in extremely flattering terms when we were discussing your services on our behalf back in my home castle. Is that supposed to be reassuring?
Rand raised an eyebrow.
Nothing personal, Jean, but your sister's a little. Yeah. And Dee's isn't.
Sten pointed out.
Maybe not quite the same way, but... Don't think anybody in this team's what you would call normal,
Nero said with a shrug.
Except me, o' course. Right, and I'm the Count of Barm.
Bao chuckled.
Anyways, just think about it, okay, man? Don't be too surprised if she actually does make a move one of these days. Won't be anything permanent, of course, but hey, you'll have fun for a while. Can we talk about somebody else?
Rand asked plaintively.
Don't look at me.
Sten shrugged.
Me and Sana don't really do complicated. That reminds me, I should see if I can bring her back something nice from Sky Tower. Sort of help the process of getting back together. An excellent thought, mon ami,
Jean told him.
I shall have to remember to do the same for Mademoiselle Cisso. Not that she has shown any signs of discontent, she is a charming girl, but not a complicated one, and yet, a handsome man does not necessarily need such a reason to do such a thing for a pretty girl, no. Guess that just leaves me, then, don't it?
Nero waggled his eyebrows.
Not that I say much about it usually, but if this is that kind o' talk between men.
Pass, Bao said firmly, and Rand grunted in agreement.
Nothing personal, but we do not need to know. Guess the boss and the girls are the only ones in a complicated situation, then,
Rand commented.
Any of the rest of Santa's family who moves in are gonna have to find boyfriends somewhere else. There's still Spar, right?
Sten pointed out.
It's single.
Everybody paused to consider that.
How would that even work?
Rand asked slowly, in the tone of somebody who knew they were going to regret asking but had to anyways.
I mean, if it's not a guy or a girl. Wouldn't that mean it wouldn't even have?
Bao trailed off.
I mean, they've got to reproduce somehow, but... It's a plant, so... Well, there are ways around that,
Nero muttered speculatively.
Maybe not for it, but the lady in question. Course, explaining that to Olspar would be another story. There is, of course, more to a relationship than simply the physical aspect,
Jean pointed out, face scrunched up.
Many young women would, perhaps, simply enjoy a close companionship even without that. From that family.
Sten pointed out, and Jean flushed.
A valid point, mon ami. Do I even want to know what you're all talking about?
Ryu announced loudly as he came down the stairs, deciding to cut the conversation off before it got worse.
Nope,
they all said simultaneously.
I didn't think so.
Shaking his head, he walked around the table towards the door.
I'm going over to the Ribobs to see what's for dinner. The girls and Spar will probably be down fairly soon, too. Anybody else? Sounds good to me,
Bao agreed, and the others did so as well. Dinner was a somewhat terse affair for once, mostly due to Sylvia's presence. She was polite to everybody, but spoke little, and it was obvious that she was still in a nasty mood over her unfortunate discovery. Dees wasn't there at all, which was probably for the best. Even so, Mrs. Ribob insisted that Spar take a plate of food back to their building for her. Ryu turned in once he was done, claiming that he just wanted to get the night over with and get some sleep, and nobody could argue with that. Reminding them that they were leaving in the morning, he went back to his room and eventually drifted off, after looking out the window at the night sky for a while. Power. We need yet more of your power. God needs more of your power. Give your soul to God. Pray to God. Praise God. Sacrifice your heart and mind to God. You will become God's power. In the morning, they set off. As Ryu had said, a warp brought them back to the beach on Whale Cape, which was apparently close to Sky Tower. Calling Grandpa up, they told him where they needed to go, and the whale blasted off, apparently recognizing the name. Dees was looking a lot better. The sorceress appeared to have gotten over her melancholia of the previous day and was acting more or less like her old self, though Ryu suspected that it was at least partially feigned. Several hours of sea travel later, the fog that Nunzio had told them about began to creep around them as they approached their destination, and soon they were surrounded by blank whiteness, unable to see anything but the ocean below. Presumably, the sea currents were kicking in as well, but if they were, then Grandpa didn't seem bothered by them. It wasn't long before they saw the top of Sky Tower emerging from the waves up ahead, a grey stone cylinder stretching about 10 feet above the water. Pulling up to it, Grandpa waited until they climbed off onto the flat top of the tower, then swam away.
All right, we're here,
Bao muttered, looking around.
Now what? Now, we head inside before the weather gets worse,
Ryu told him, leading the group towards a hatch in the center of the tower.
Not that it looks like it will, but best to be on the safe side.
Bending over, he banged on the hatch.
Anybody in there?
A moment passed, and then the hatch opened, revealing a haggard-looking, purple-scaled Menero.
Who are you guys?
He demanded.
How did you get here? Trade secret,
Ryu joked, then decided to cut him a break. It looked like he needed one.
We're professionals from Oria. The First Bank of Primo hired us to come in here and solve whatever problem it is that's going on.
Digging into a pocket, he pulled out the written contract Nunzio had insisted on signing with Nero, and passed it over.
Thanks Saint Eva.
The Menero said, wiping his brow.
Come in, by all means.
The group followed him inside, down a ladder into the only room above water level. The floor was a ring around the center, where water lapped at its edges.
Did Mr. Clemenza tell you about the situation, then? He said he figured something's gone haywire with the weather control system,
Ryu explained.
But since they couldn't get anybody in here, he didn't know how or why. If only that was the problem,
the Menero muttered.
On the contrary, this is deliberate. Some crazy witch wandered in here and got all the way down there before anybody thought to stop her, and she's been screwing around with it ever since. We can only assume her magical talents are strong enough to allow her to interfere with its functions. Nobody's gone down to try and stop her?
Sten asked, blinking.
Of course not.
The Menero scoffed.
We're merchants and miners, young man, not fighters. We don't want to mess with anybody like that. That's what people like you are for. People like,
Cat started to growl.
Wait,
Ryu asked quickly, putting a hand on her arm.
Miners. Yes, the magic in this tower causes it to naturally accumulate deposits of all sorts of gemstones,
the Menero explained.
We mine them in addition to using this tower to access the sea floor easily. That doesn't sound like any magic I've ever heard of,
Nina said dubiously.
Goddess keys,
Dees grunted.
Anything connected to Miria is different from normal magic. It starts sort of leaking, eventually, and side effects start cropping up. You think this is bad, you should see the Isle of Giants. I'd rather not,
Ryu told her, then glanced down at the water.
So. It's all underwater from here down, then? For the most part, yes.
The Menero nodded.
There are some rooms with air pockets in them, but not many. You do have artificial gills, yes.
Ryu scratched his head.
I brought
Bao told him, taking off his pack and opening it up.
Figured on something like that. Spar says he doesn't need and Dees has her own pair.
Pulling out the apparatuses they'd received in Sima Fort, he began passing them out to everybody else except Jean. They mainly consisted of glass tubes that looked like they were meant to rest around the neck, with vented apparatus for breathing through and mechanical boxes on the rear ends.
I require minimal oxygen,
Spar explained.
I should be able to hold my breath long enough to reach the rooms without difficulty. Mon ami s.
Jean frowned.
There may be a difficulty here. Yeah, those are Simon models, aren't they?
The Menero scowled.
This is salt water, kids. They'll work, sure, but not for long. I figure maybe 10 minutes at a time. You'll need to clean the filters in the air rooms, too, or else they'll stop working. Great.
Ryu glanced at Dees, who was looking smug as she affixed her own gills around her neck.
Not a word about yours being the Menero model. Yes, I know that they are. I wasn't going to say anything,
she protested innocently.
I'm sure.
He turned back to the Menero.
We should be able to make it to these rooms that quickly, yeah. As long as you don't dilly-dally, yes.
The Menero nodded.
Oh, and watch out for the monsters. They avoid us, but they can be pretty nasty around strangers. This day just keeps getting better and better,
Bao commented through the gills.
Sooner we get it over with, the happier we'll all be, then,
Ryu told him.
Come on, let's go.
Climbing into the water, he began pulling himself down a series of stone rungs set into the side of the shaft, and the other followed, some muttering more than others. Rand in particular seemed grumpy when they reached the bottom a good minute later. The sunken tower looked just like any other old edifice would from the inside, save for its aquatic nature. They were now standing in the middle of a hall stretching both left and right.
Okay, we've got maybe 4 minutes,
Ryu said once they were all down there.
Dees, which way do we go? How should I know?
The sorceress shrugged.
Don't ask me. Haven't you been here before?
Rand asked.
Pretty sure I heard something about that. Yeah, but back then, the weather control system was on the top floor,
she pointed out.
Obviously, that's not the case anymore. Perhaps the Menero clan simply added another story on top of that one, in order to allow access,
Nina suggested.
Thus, we started from atop the old roof, and descended through a shaft that was also added later on. Couldn't we just go back up and blow a hole through the floor, then?
Sten suggested.
You know, save some time. Sounds like a good idea to me,
Cat agreed. Everybody else ignored them.
Well, from what I do remember.
Dees frowned.
You have to pretty much cross every floor, every time, to get to the next staircase up. Felt like we dropped maybe 5, so.
She paused, then pointed at the wall ahead of them.
Never mind. Problem solved.
On the wall was a map of the tower on which many rooms were marked with various colors. A convenient "You are here" arrow was indicating a room on the 5th floor.
How thoughtful,
Spar murmured, walking over to examine it. Apparently, the grass man could talk without losing its breath, somehow.
Ah, I see that an air room is directly to our right on the next floor up. We shall simply need to pass through a hot room to access it. I wonder what that is, and why it requires a warning. Looks like there's cold rooms, too,
Sten grunted.
And high current areas. That's encouraging. Oh, my.
Jean grimaced.
I do dislike strong water currents. I would transform, but doing so in salt water. It is not a pleasant experience. Tell me about it,
Rand grumbled.
Anybody else getting the feeling we're probably gonna end up not getting paid enough for this? Leave that to Nero, I guess.
Ryu shrugged.
At least it looks like they put in a lot more staircases all over the place, so we can use the closest ones. Whatever this hot room is, we'll just have to get through it.
Walking down the hall, they opened the door of the room they were seeking, and he immediately recoiled as nearly boiling water began flowing out.
Yow! What the hell is this? Some kind of underwater heat vents, perhaps?
Nina suggested, wincing along with the others as the heat continued to pour out.
Ooh, I can feel my wings wilting. Let's just get it over with.
Bao suggested.
Right,
Ryu growled, running through the water towards the stairs as fast as he could. Behind him, he heard the others cursing and groaning, and he practically threw himself up the staircase and out of the water into an air-filled room. Lying on the floor, he idly noted that there was actual steam rising from his arms as the others followed suit. Rand's eruption in particular sounded as if Grandpa had followed them in.
10 minutes in, and I already hate this place,
the big man grumbled.
Think we all do,
Kat muttered, waving a hand in front of her face. Her normally somewhat ruddy skin was now a bright pink.
This discount tan had better not last. How do you suppose I feel about it?
Nina asked. She looked, if anything, even worse.
Yeah, I kind of miss the way this place used to be set up,
Dees grumbled. She had come up last, as her serpentine lower body wasn't really built for speed.
And considering what it was like, that's saying something. Alright, let's clean these filters out,
Ryu grunted, pulling his gills off.
Jean, you know how to do this, right? Oui, mon ami,
the prince replied shortly, even he seemed displeased with the way the job was going.
It is a simple thing.
Following his instructions, the 6 of them with Simon models all had them cleaned out in a few minutes. Slipping them back on, they opened the door and found themselves in a narrow room almost like a closet, with a drainage gate for the floor.
Airlock,
Sten explained.
So the air room doesn't flood. Thoughtful,
Spar murmured, closing the door behind him as they all crowded into the room. Kat and Nina actually ended up having to climb on Rand.
Shall we? Right.
Ryu opened the other door, and several tons of water hit him right in the face. One series of painful batterings and bruisings for all involved later, they continued onward down the next hall, towards what was labeled as a cold room, stopping only to kill a couple of shelled cuttlefish along the way. The fact that these turned out to be completely immune to magic garnered no more than a succession of unamused groans. The reason for the name of the room became quickly apparent when Ryu opened the door and winced as icy water poured over him. Looking ahead, he could see that the ceiling was actually frozen over, including the top of the stairwell.
Okay, how the hell does this happen?
Kat demanded.
Yeah, I know we're heading into winter, but come on. Just get in there and break that ice.
Bao told her.
Somebody's gotta open it up before we can get through there. Oh.
She blinked.
Right.
Moving around Ryu, she charged up the stairs and shattered the ice above her with a punch. Everybody else waited until she had finished clearing the shards out of the hole before following her up. As they recovered in the room above, Ryu idly noted that several of them were shivering.
This much temperature shock can't be good for our health,
Spar murmured clinically as the other began cleaning the filters on their artificial gills again.
I'm just glad the water pressure isn't causing problems,
Nina told it.
I'd heard that the Menero clan maintained enchantments throughout the tower to prevent that, but it's a bit hard not to worry about it, all the same. Water pressure.
Kat blinked.
What the hell is that? Complicated,
Dees told her.
Science. Leah, forget it, then. We'll all have K take a look at us when we get back,
Ryu decided.
Alright, everybody ready.
Once they all had their gills back on, they went through the next airlock, identical to the first, down to the sudden surge of water they were forced to endure. Continuing through the halls, they fought off a bunch of red, humanoid catfish monsters. Despite their form, they were mindless brutes with no hint of sentience, only bearing a slight resemblance to the Menero clan.
I had not realized that a saltwater variant of these existed,
Jean commented as they proceeded, stepping over the corpses.
They seem much more vicious than the freshwater breed common to my homeland, yes. Let's hope they don't spread further,
Ryu grunted.
Alright, it says there's a high current area in here. Let's see what that is.
Opening the door, he was immediately jerked off his feet and pulled inside. The water inside was moving as fast as any raging river, apparently in a full circle around the staircase in the center of the room. Caught off guard, he was banged against several walls as he fought to regain his footing.
You have got to be kidding me. What is wrong with this place?
Cat yowled as the others were pulled in as well, bouncing off a wall with an annoyed grunt.
Ow. Everything,
Spar told her gravely, even its voice was starting to take on an annoyed tone.
Everything is wrong with it. Despite the fact that that statement is non-quantifiable. What the hell does?
Sten started to snap, then whimpered as he saw Rand about to collide with him.
No. Sorry.
Rand grunted as he smashed the Highlander against the wall.
Oh, man, I'm gonna puke. Not in your gills, not in your gills.
Deez yelled, somehow grabbing a hold of the railing in the stairwell, her body whipped out behind her in the water, tail trailing to the wall.
Grab on, people. If you can get into the stairwell, it's fine. Grab on?
Nina protested.
Not above the waist.
She growled.
I don't believe this shit,
Ryu muttered, reluctantly grabbing at her tail with both arms as he whirled past it again. Catching it, he began slowly climbing towards the stairwell.
This is worse than Tunlin.
As soon as he was close enough to grab the stairwell, he let go and lunged for it, and managed to pull himself in.
Nothing is worse than Tunlin, man,
Bao grumbled as he did the same.
Nothing.
The rest of them followed suit, and they climbed up the stairs into another air room one by one. Rand was the last, hand over his face. As Deez followed him up, he ran for a corner of the room, wrenched his gills off, and was noisily sick.
Are we almost there?
He asked once he was done.
Should just be one more,
Deez told him as the others all cleaned their gill filters out once more.
Of course, I've kind of forgotten what's on this floor by now. I don't recall anything too troublesome, but my own memory may not be completely reliable after this series of unfortunate events,
Spar told her.
Let's just get it over with and get out,
Ryu muttered, and the others all grumbled agreement, putting their gills back on. Moving through the airlock, they stomped out into the hallway, ready for anything. Several Meneros looked up from the clusters of gems growing on the walls they were working with and blinked. Ryu said after a long moment.
Hey. Which way to the weather control room? Oh, is that still going on?
One of them grunted, and the others turned back to their work.
Saint Eve Almighty. Yeah, it's the last door on the left. Thanks,
Bao told him as they walked past.
Oh, watch out for the crowdworms,
another one added just as Ryu was opening the door.
They don't like strangers. Crowdworms.
Ryu blinked as the door swung open. 3 hideous, puffy, eyeless blue blobs with gaping, ribbed maws full of needle-like fangs turned towards them and hissed in unison.
Why?
Bao said flatly, looking over one of his shoulders.
Yeah, you know what?
Deez growled, peeking over the other.
No. Just no. Everybody out of the way, I've had enough of this crap.
Shoving past Ryu, she raised her cane above her head as she moved into the room, and the water around them began glowing red and gold. Behind her, 3 massive pillars of flame curved over her head, ending in the shapes of clawed hand. Seizing the unfortunate crowdworms, they slammed them into the ground and then dissipated, leaving the burning wreckage of the monsters behind. Though the flames were soon extinguished by the water, the charred corpses remained.
Holy shit,
Rand muttered, staring, as she glanced back over her shoulder, smiling slightly.
Shall we? We might as well,
Spar agreed, walking in. The others followed them up the stairs, and they emerged into a bank of fog even thicker than the one surrounding the outside of the tower.
Aren't we indoors?
Sten asked after a moment.
Does that matter?
Jean replied, unusually bluntly.
Guess not. Somebody's coming.
Ryu growled, putting his hand on his sword as a humanoid figure began approaching.
Probably this witch they told us about. All right, let's.
He trailed off as she emerged from the fog.
Hey.
The young woman said, sounding surprised, as she looked them over. She was slim, pale, and beautiful, made highly apparent by how scantily clad she was. Aside from a knee-length loincloth, all she wore were a few strips of cloth on her upper body. She did, however, have a great deal of jewelry on, including a strange golden headdress over her long, wavy green hair. Her eyes were green as well, though the unfocused look in them lent her features a certain dull, dreamy look.
Do I know you? No, but we might know you,
Ryu said with a remarkable level of self-control.
Are you one of Giggly's granddaughters? Oh, you know Granny.
She blinked, and they all waited for her to think that over. After a moment, she blinked again.
You must be the ones we're all supposed to come find, over in southern Oria. My name's Spoo. Granny called us all and told us to come, but I forgot.
She paused.
I kind of do that a lot. I'll bet,
Bao replied levelly.
So. What's all this? Oh, the fog.
She laughed, and Ryu had to deliberately avoid wincing at the total lack of thought that was practically audible in it.
I was bored, so I came in here and started making fog everywhere. Fog, fog, fog. Fog, fog, fog.
Jean began singing along cheerfully.
Fog, fog, fa.
Spoo began to dance, as everybody else's faces contorted except for Spar.
Fog, fog.
Jean started dancing as well, then trailed off, stopping.
My apologies, but Mademoiselle Ciso has asked me to stop. Oh, you're fused with Ciso.
She stopped as well, looking at him with actual interest now before moving on to the others, nodding at Sten
and you. Sana, right? Are they the only ones so far?
She broke off, staring at Nina, and then she smiled.
Oh, my. And who are you? You smell wonderful. Oh, Saint Eva, I didn't mean it.
Kat muttered fervently as Nina blushed, eyes widening.
Mean what?
Ryu asked innocently.
Never mind. Oh, my, are you embarrassed?
Spoo slowly walked towards the Silent Wing clanswoman, smile widening.
You've never fused with either of my sisters, then? It's all right, it doesn't hurt. Hold it, Dee said flatly, stepping between them. Rule 1, Nina doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to. Rule 2, Nina doesn't have to do any body she doesn't want to. Rule 3, anybody who tries violating the first 2 rules gets fused with Giggly's boyfriend for a night. Plenty of other people here to try fusing with. Myself not included. Does anybody else really wish we could be somewhere else for the entirety of this conversation?
Rand muttered under his breath.
Like, on the moon. Oh, all right,
Spoo said, backing off.
I just prefer fusing with women, that's all. It doesn't have to be anything more. Preference noted,
Nina murmured, recovering slightly.
Thank you, Dees. I think. No problem.
The sorceress glanced at Kat, who slowly nodded as well, and the two of them advanced on the girl.
Now then, Missy. You made all this fog because you were bored. That's right.
Spoo nodded.
That's all.
After a moment, the zenny dropped.
Oh, is it bothering you? I'm sorry. It's bothering a lot of people,
Dees told her flatly.
All over the world. Oh, I'll stop it, then.
Spoo waved her hands, and the fog in the room began thinning immediately.
See? All gone.
She glanced at Nina, smiling again.
Do I get a reward? What don't you?
Dees started to snarl, then cut off as Kat put a hand on her shoulder.
I got this,
the Warren girl told her, remarkably calmly.
Not that you're wrong. I'm with you. You're just being too subtle, is all. Here, let me try.
Reaching over, she grabbed Spoo's necklace and began pulling her towards the door.
Let's go for a walk. Hey.
Spoo asked blankly before the door slammed behind them. Everybody else in the room exchanged a glance.
This has been the weirdest couple of days I've seen in a long time,
Ryu said flatly.
And I turn into a flying lizard on a regular basis.
On cue, the door opened again, revealing Tiga Lee and Patty Smith, both who stared blankly at them.
Of course.
Bao slapped his forehead. Tiga blinked.
Hey, guys. What's up? Not much.
Ryu shrugged.
You. Same old same old. What the hell are you doing here?
Patty screeched.
I could ask you the same question,
Dee snapped back.
Who are you people? Somebody who wishes he knew you better, babe.
Tiga whistled appreciatively, giving Ryu another glance.
Damn, man. First Miss Winfrey, and now this? How many hot girls do you have on your team, hey? One more, but she went off down the hall a moment ago.
Sten shrugged.
Same way Clarice did, hey.
Tiga scratched his chin.
I'm guessing this isn't the records room, then. I believe that would be the next one over,
Spar told him.
Told you,
Patty said smugly.
Yeah.
Tiga waved as they turned away.
Good seeing you again. Take it easy. See you around,
Ran told him as they closed the door again. Everybody exchanged another glance.
Do I even want to know?
Dees asked eventually.
Probably not,
Sten told her wryly as Kat slammed the door open again and led Siso inside with an arm around her shoulder. The Fusion Clan woman looked much more sober now.
Hey, did you know there's another group of mercs running around here?
Kat asked them brightly.
Ran into one of them. Clarice something. Seemed okay. Yeah, we've run into her and their head guy before,
Ran told her.
They're pretty good guys, as far as we can tell. Why do I always miss the good stuff, hey?
She shook her head.
Maybe we should, I dunno, go drinking with them sometime, then. Patty Smith spang crolling them,
Bao told her bluntly.
Yuka, never mind.
She made a face.
Anyways, me and Spoo got everything straightened out, didn't we, Spoo? Yes, ma'am,
Spoo said quickly.
I'll behave. Well. Good.
Ryu coughed.
Why don't you? Head over to your granny's, then. All right,
she agreed, glancing once more at Nina.
Just think about it, okay?
Flickering, she vanished as if she had been a mirage.
Well.
Ryu crossed his arms and glanced around.
Job's done. Good for us. Can we just go?
Nina asked, her face still bright red.
Hold on.
Kat blinked.
Does this mean we have to go back all the way? Oh, hell no.
Dees shook her head.
Allow me.
She began chanting, and the room shimmered around them, before melting into the one at the top of the tower, where they'd come in.
Exit spell. Like warp, except it works indoors. Pretty handy,
Bao admitted as the Menero who had let them in ran over.
You did it.
He grabbed Ryu's hand and shook it.
Good work. I knew Mr. Nunzio had hired the right men as soon as I saw you. The fog's already faded away.
A thought seemed to cross his mind, and he hesitated.
This wasn't COD, was it? Pretty sure it's not.
Ryu smiled slightly, though he knew it would look strained.
Pleasure to be of service. We'll be on our way now.
Leading the group up to the tower top, he glanced at Jean.
You can warp us back from here, right? But of course, Mon Ami,
Jean assured him, and a moment later, they appeared back outside their home.
Hey, fellas.
Nero raised an eyebrow as they walked back inside.
Giggly said another. We know,
Ryu cut him off.
We'd rather not talk about it. Job's done, though. How much are we going to get? Between that, and Gondarev's account?
Nero smiled.
We're gonna have a total of 20,000 zeni common in here once Mr. Clemenza pays up.
Everybody paused for a moment.
Wow,
Kat said eventually.
I guess we are getting paid enough for this. Speak for yourself,
Nina muttered, but there was no bite in it.
Well.
Ryu clapped his hands together.
I'd hate to do it again, but it's good to know we're getting what we've earned out of this one. Let's take tomorrow off, too, all the same. I think we've earned it. After that. Carmen,
Ran said, and though everybody could tell he was trying and failing to keep his voice casual, nobody called him on it. "Excuse me while I kiss the sky."